Like I go to my mechanic not because of the tool that he or she has. I go to him or her because they face the problem with the tool they do put in their hand. They become the with. And that's the thing that I think we're failing at the moment is that we think if we
MSPs have been selling and delivering security for 4 decades now. They are no strangers to security technology, and yet we find ourselves in an interesting predicament today where there are large numbers of small and medium-sized organizations at risk to cyber threats, despite having access to IT providers who handle their other IT management needs. Now, to discuss how to fix this problem, and that's what we want to do today, we want to attempt to resolve and fix this issue. I've asked Michael Crean from SonicWall to join me as we analyze this situation and attempt to arrive at some reasonable conclusions for this predicament. Michael, welcome to the MSPZone.
How are you, sir?
Before we get into it, I've known you for a number of years now, and I certainly am very familiar with the now, this is going on well over 20 years where SonicWall as a company has been very engaged in the MSP space. They've had an MSP program since 2003. I was involved in many of those meetings, at my, early years at MSP Alliance. But maybe you could give the audience a little bit of a background on where you came from and how you ended up at Sonic.
Sure. So I was the CEO and founder of Solutions Granted. We started 22 years ago. It was needed something to do moment, really didn't think or know why I was starting a company, but just ended up doing it. Kind of went through this life cycle of trying to find my passion and purpose from being a VAR to a government contractor to an MSP to a really bad MSP, finding my purpose in cybersecurity and realizing I loved helping those that couldn't help themselves. We built out our own channel starting about 10 years ago, built our own SOC or MDR offering or EDR, and go on about the R's because everybody got all the R's. I think and through that journey, I've been a SonicWall partner for 18 years. So using their technologies and being on that journey, not quite as long as you had been in knowing them, but, still pretty long. And, it started early last year where there were some conversations that started happening and SonicWall wanted to be more than a firewall. They wanted to be in the MSP, SOC as a service, MDR space, and it made sense. Corporate cultures align. I really liked them. Obviously, you have an 18-year relationship with any manufacturer. You must like them or you're just crazy and you're staying around for abuse. And it wasn't that. So the acquisition took place in November of last year. And now it's kind of my purpose and pleasure to bring all of the things that I've learned about being a channel partner with a manufacturer, but now being on the other side of the wall, unintended, to
like that.
Got to drop one dad joke.
Yeah.
To now have this opportunity to really help a much larger global channel with this really big problem that we're all suffering from today.
Yeah, no, I respect that. I think I didn't know that you were a SonicWall partner for that long. When I started, they had us come in very early and said, hey, look, what do we need to know about MSPs? And this is a whole nother lifetime ago, right? In 2003, the TZ150, is that even around anymore?
Unfortunately, yes. We've end up lifed it and we've killed it off. But, this was like the beauty of some of the things that I realized as a SonicWall partner, like the quality of the hardware that they were manufacturing, I guess we manufacture, just seemed to run forever. So yeah, there's like 105s and 150s out there running and they're end of life and they're not supposed to be. They have no services, no support, no warranty. But yeah, unfortunately, they're still out there running. Maybe not doing what they were designed to do in the beginning.
No, I didn't mean to belittle the technology. It was just that was the technology that I remembered was like the garden variety average general practitioner MSP was using a lot of the TZ150 type of technology boxes out there in their practice. And so my first question is, a lot has changed. That's 20 years that certainly you've been, a partner or at least involved in the SonicWall ecosystem. I don't want your perspective solely as a SonicWall employee or advocate, but as a professional in the channel, what has changed? Is it simply a technological change that we find ourselves in from those old legacy firewall days to EDR, MDR, XDR style technologies, or is it more than that?
Way more than that. I mean, obviously, technology is advancing every day at this rate that, like, people say, like, well, what's it going to look like tomorrow? And I can't even tell you what it looks like today. It's moving so fast. I mean, it is just, with the amount of innovation and the people that are coming to this space and the bright minds that have been living on technology their entire life. Like, think about it. Like, you and I probably were lying to our parents about our homework being done so we could go outside and play, not so we could get online and play Fortnite with our buddies, you know?
Right.
So that's been a big change, that there's so much advancement taking place. But the other thing that's really changed is the amount of connectivity. Like, I didn't have my first cell phone until I was in the military. And I had to have it because I was in a unit that I was on a 1-hour recall. And so if I wanted to leave my house and have any semblance of life, I had to have some sort of communication, and so this is like what now is, that's the norm. The norm is like everybody's got a cell phone, and the amount of compute power that's in a cell phone today is crazy compared to what we had 10 years ago. I mean, I'm not even going to go back 22 years ago, or go back 20 years. It's just insane. And so with that, you're also seeing the bad guys, the threat actors, whatever we want to call them, they are in tune with how we're consuming. I mean, like, I did a kitchen ring, and I know it's way off topic, but it's not. My microwave is connected, my refrigerator is connected, my stove is connected, my dishwasher is connected. My kids leave the refrigerator door open. I don't even have to be home to know it now. And I can call them and say, hey, shut the darn door. So when you have those type of conveniences in your life, those are all really great things, but what are the threat actors going to do with it? They're going to try to use it as a launching. And it's not just about our homes, it's about our businesses. So we've opened ourselves up to the entire globe of degenerates that want to come take it.
Good point. Sometimes I actually wish I had my Trio 650. Remember those little flip phones? I love that thing.
My mom still has a flip phone because she refuses to go to a smartphone, and it is really hard to keep buying her one when that one breaks.
She's probably the most secure of all of us for that reason.
I'm sure she is.
A little question back to the kind of TZ150 example. When those types of legacy firewalls were, and I'm doing this to try to get a now versus then picture for people watching and listening. Back then in the early 2000s, when managed security, and I don't recall this being managed security specifically, or if it was just a part of the managed services that MSPs were selling. But I don't recall the threat levels being anything close to this severe and consequential as we have today. Do you agree with that, or do you not agree with that?
No, I 100% agree. But I also don't think the amount of connected space was near the same. I mean, it kind of went to like that story of why I talked about my kitchen. Like, even 10 years ago, like, how many truly connected devices did you have in your house? Like, it's crazy when you see a normal house today, and this translates to business. The amount of smart devices in a business with a thermostat or a refrigerator or a whiteboard or a TV or a projector, whatever it is. Even our cars. Like, when you think about, like, if we wanted to give the bad guys a way to go after us, we've connected everything. So it's business. And so, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the threat form is pervasive. AI didn't really, well, it did exist. I mean, in theory, it's been around for an awful long time, but their compute power to use it didn't exist the way that, the devices that you and I are talking on right now, the devices that we have so much compute power that this artificial intelligence and machine learning and the things that we do, that you and I could go take advantage of so many people if we were the dirty threat. And I think that's what's really changed.
So the exposure, the opportunity is increased, certainly. Are we in the intro, right? I ask a lot of people, I've been asking this question for about 5 years, are we winning the cyber war, right? And different people give me different answers. I'd love to hear your answer on that in a moment. But are we communicating effectively now? Right, we've got some really good technology on the good side, right? On the defensive side, on the, I don't call it blocking and tackling, but on the ability to keep organizations, even small organizations, safe. I think we have a pretty good availability and maybe a price point availability of these technologies. We can get to that in a moment, but do you think that we're messaging the threat adequately today?
I think it depends on who you. So, like, I'll answer from the point of view of, like, I look at an individual like Matt. Like, does Matt Lee communicate it effectively and make it so easy for everybody else? He is set it. Like, I make it for the channel. And I hate to say dumbing down security. You know, you go to your surgeon and you want them to talk to you. Surgeon. Right? So if you go to your cybersecurity professional and you're not that cybersecurity professional, you probably need them to do a certain way. So you see really great pockets of people that are doing just an amazing job at educating and raising the top, and people are becoming more educated, becoming more mature. But then you've got this other potential side of it, and now I have to be part of the other side of it, of being the manufacturer. Buy my stuff because my stuff fixes your problem. And it's unfortunately it's not true. Stuff doesn't fix the problem. People fix the problem. Like, I go to my mechanic not because of the tool that he or she has, to go to him or her because they fix the problem with the tools they do put in their hand. They become something to work with. And that's the thing that I think we're failing at the moment, is that we think if we buy this one more thing, it will fix this one more problem. And it doesn't, honestly. It helps, it just doesn't fix it the way we hope it does.
That's an interesting point, Michael, because you know, we've all heard what I no doubt, I know it's truthful, but it's become kind of a cliche of the CEO who has all this IT security in his or her company, and she says, I want an iPad, and I don't want MFA on my iPad because I want to be able to get in there very easily, and don't turn it on for this device. Is there a failure to lead by example in corporate culture?
Do as I say, not as I do. That's the problem that we're experiencing. And you do see it from the highest ranks. And, you know, I had 9 years of military service, and the most incredible leaders that I've ever experienced in my lifetime during that level of service were the ones that were walking side by side with me. When it was time to go, they were going first. It was like, oh, I better keep up. And I think we in the industry need to take some of that idea of, like, hey, I demand it of you, then I should demand more of myself. I'm going to do a +1 on you because I'm actually more of a threat than the receptionist or the bookkeeper or whatever it is. And how do you, like, I think for me, it even goes back to the most simplest things in life. Like, if I really want my children to do something, do I just expect them to understand how to do it? No, like, I have to show them how to do it. And if I tell them, don't drink and drive, I better not be drinking and driving. Because, what am I showing them by not leading with that strong example? I think this big failure in our industry today is that it's not enough to just say it, but it's actually for everybody from the top down to continue to reinforce that it's good enough for me, then it's definitely good enough for you.
I'm assuming you're keeping in close tabs with the channel. I mean, in no small part due to your current role at SonicWall. When you talk to MSPs, I think that they get the message. I'd like to hear if you think they're getting the message about security, and I'd like to know if you've heard them tell you about what their customers are saying, because I'm really curious about what the end user situation is, and I know that that's a very big population out there. But any thoughts or hints on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, if I just go back 5 years, the maturity of the MSPs is definitely moving in the right direction. And they're starting to take it more serious and realizing that they're a supply chain risk. And that's another big topic, talking about supply chain risk, because everybody is kind of thought about supply chain as only the manufacturer, technology being the supply chain. But I am the manufacturer, and I am the MSSP, and the MSP is, and then the business owner is to their. And so the supply chain thing is a bit of a bigger discussion that we all have to try to understand. And again, let's do the right thing for others the way we want it done for ourselves. The maturity is happening. I would say 5 years ago, maybe 3 out of every 10 MSP were starting to mature. Today, I think in that 5 year, we're probably starting to see 6 to 7 of the 10 conversations. So it's really moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, there's still some of those out there. And I've had a recent conversation last week with a partner who was like, no, I'm not going to tell my customer. Well, what do you mean you're not? Well, I'm just going to tell them these are the options. He's like, so you're what? You're not going to be the subject matter expert. You're not going to be the person of authority that's supposed to guide and lead and advise and inspire. So that's a huge problem. There's still on the receiving end of it, so many of the end users in the SMB space, especially the small business. I'm not at risk. Why do people want to attack me? I've got nothing of value. I was like, man, you've got all of your client data. And while it's a smaller subset than a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Target or whatever it may be, you're a bigger target because you're an easier target. And they just don't buy it.
Michael, I don't understand that. I mean, I do, but I guess it's hard for me to understand in light of all you turn on any device, you watch the news, wherever you get your news from, it's hard to find after a week, no mention of a cyber attack that has, lost 1 million records of someone's data. So it's going to happen to somebody else. Like a tornado is never going to hit me or my house. I'm never going to be, in the zone. Is it that? Because it certainly seems like we've got so much example of the last 5+ years, certainly throughout the pandemic. There was a ton of cyber activity. Who is out there still saying that this is not going to impact me? I have nothing of value to steal.
Well, so, I like the thing that you said that you see the news and 1 million records have been compromised or stolen or taken, whatever it is. But they see that as big business. They see that as this target-rich environment. And then so the news is, and I've heard this from a journalist once, if it bleeds, it leads. So the more catastrophic it is, the more it's going to get reported. We obviously know this with some recent events. But then when you think about like the small mom and pop or the 2-chair dental office or the 3-attorney practice or the small, rural private school, those things never hit the news. Nobody's ever talking about it. And so because it's not being sensationalized, it's not being talked about enough and educated, we're left in this place that because the news that we get feeds us all of these large corporation compromises. We've got to find, and it's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to these of us that decide to be in this channel and supporting this type of customer in the SMB space. We have to be the CRO, and that's my joke, the chief repeating officer. We have to continue to tell the story over and over and over again until somebody tells us, okay, enough, I've heard you, I got it, shut up. When somebody's tired of hearing me say it, then I've gone to the right place.
Well, but Michael, I think it's a good point because as long as you mentioned, 7 out of 10 of the MSPs are taking a, kind of a more firm prescriptive stance on what services their customers are going to get, what they're going to be offered. The 3 out of the 10 are still, that's a lot of vulnerability. That's a lot of lost revenue. That's a lot of stolen IP. That's not insignificant.
No, it's huge. I mean, I don't know how many small businesses there are in North America, but it's hundreds of thousands is my guess. Whatever that number is. I wish I knew it. That would have made me look really smart coming in here. And so if we think it's only 30%, that 30% is significant. And my number might be a little off. Those are just some of my findings because I'm running around in the same communities that I'm watching that are starting to mature. But what about all of the MSPs that aren't coming to talk? Aren't getting the same education? They're still in that break fix mode or that idea of you went back, you started your story from 2004. Well, let's talk about what happened back then. I gave you antivirus, maybe good, maybe not good, and I gave you a firewall. There was no monitoring, there was no updating, there was no management, there was no anything going on with that. And there's still a lot of people that operate that. We don't secure our homes that way anymore. Our car technology. Think about the automatic braking in a car when we're distracted and it decides to apply the brakes for us, or we're shifting out of our lane and it pulls us back. So why did all of those technological advances that save our lives not translate into things that are saving livelihoods
point. I'd like to shift the conversation to the SMB because I think you're absolutely right. I don't know what the actual number is, but I've heard, I think it's definitely in the six figures of it, certainly in North America, and globally. I don't know what that number would be, but we've been having an increasing number of conversations with government agencies who are telling us things that we suspected, but they're confirming it. So it's nice to know that we're not insane. But the message is basically, the threat actors aren't just going after the very high profile targets. What they're now starting to go after are the ancillary, right? The adjacent to organizations that are, I think, fit very nicely into the inauspicious, the unassuming small organization that just so happens to be a vendor to some other organization that is the real target. And they, they're not doing executables like where they're triggering a ransomware so everybody knows that they're in there, and then everybody, is now springing into action. They're doing this living off the land, right? Kind of concept. And these are very scary tactics. My concern is, if that's true, and I do assume that it is true, the SMB market has to be better aware and better equipped with the technologies like the type that you guys at Sonic will have, available to those MSPs. Any thoughts about that as a future campaign that we have to wage?
Well, I don't even know that it's necessarily a future campaign. Like you said the word target, and it immediately made me think about, okay, the target group. How did that happen? The vendor, the HVAC vendor that got hit, that had access, and that's how it happened. So this happened years ago. I mean, we're at least going 5 years that happened.
Oh yeah.
So if that happened 5 years ago and we lost visibility of that as a community, and the government is calling it out more, through its campaigns and things, then it has gotten to a pretty large problem. If we've already seen it, we've already experienced it, and now it's being called out to the SMBs. And we have to become more assertive at the end of the day, is what we really have to be as a caretaker to those who are taking care of us. That's our job. We volunteered to do this. We decided we were going to be support organization to these MSPs that were supporting the SMB market. And so, if we can tell the better story and we can give them the better path to success of, it isn't buy my stuff and it fixes the problem. It's like, buy my stuff, become an excellent practitioner with my stuff, and then force your client. I mean, it was 2 years ago that CISA came out and they were reporting some Microsoft numbers. It was like 34% of users in the Microsoft ecosystem were using MFA. Like, that's a terrible statistic. And we see it all the time still. Like 83% of the events that we're responding to deal with identity. And the vast majority of them we find don't have MFA enabled. Like, come on. How long have we been talking about MFA? And why is that not just you must do it or you just can't be certain?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And it's not like it's difficult technology. It should just be baked into your everyday movements, right? And so it's a behavioral thing, I think, is maybe what you were getting at. And I that's a fantastic point. I would like to talk about the SMB customer. You've made a couple of references to the shift in the policy or strategy of the MSP servicing those SMB organizations to become more emphatic, more declarative about, this is what we are offering, this is what you're going to do, or we're not going to service you. You do that at the mid-market or enterprise level. It's a different reaction, right? They're more likely to be saying, because they've got internal expertise, driving and managing their IT and security, they're going to be telling their MSPs that they outsource to, this is what we want from you, this is how we want you to behave, this is the SLA we want you to agree to. That is not the case at the SMB level. And do you think that it's going to, that the battle is going to be, or the war is going to be won, or at least not lost, by MSPs starting to be more assertive about what and who they will manage and who they won't?
I think so, for sure. I mentioned Matt Lee earlier, and he tells this story about his days at Iconic. when they were building out their security practice. And there was a year where they said, okay, these are the 3 products we're going to launch. And they didn't go ask for permission. They went to their clients, they turned it on and said, at the end of the month, at the beginning of the month, or whatever it was, your bill is going to be. And that will say that they had a 90-some-odd% adoption rate of, okay, I'll do it. And then they got what they really wanted is the other remaining percentage said no, they got a conversation out of it. So instead of going and trying to have a conversation, if you know it's the right thing to do and your name is it, and you force them, Matt said they did it 3 times in 1 year and had the same result. So it's the fear of the unknown that paralyzes us in the moment to move forward to do the right thing. The right thing can be really hard. It can also be scary and risky of like, am I going to lose customers? Am I going to lose revenue? But even if you got 80% of your customers to agree to do it, which means you sold them a little bit more, which means you became a little bit more profitable, which means you also became more scalable because you were dealing with enough shenanigans and you lost 20% of it, didn't you become a better organization? And if that 20%, they get fired enough, what will they end up doing? Well, this has to be the truth. So I better start getting in line with these lines.
Right. So a bundling, I'm hearing, and or some call it a minimum baseline, a security baseline that they're starting to operate from. Do you think that the MSPs you're talking to, Michael, have a sense of the risk of those non-cyber hygienic customers, maybe unmanaged, maybe reactive, who are, when I say reactive, I mean they still have them on an RMM, right? They're still backing up their data. They're performing kind of managed services, but it's not really a managed services relationship. Do those MSPs understand the risk that those types of clients pose to them?
I don't know that they do. Or if they do, they're not willing to admit it, because the scariest thing is saying something out loud and then you become accountable for it. If you think it and you don't say it, then you're only accountable to yourself. But if you say it and someone else hears you, well, now you better do something about it. Then you're just negligent. So I think that, yeah, I'm seeing a shift where some of them are starting to understand. But there's still the almighty dollar that is, swaying. It's hard to do the right thing, because if it was easy to do the right thing, everybody would just do it. And so,
Sure.
Especially when you're in this new startup place of whatever it is in your business, or maybe you've been at it for 20 years and you're finding some economic headwind that you're trying to battle against. You don't want to lose a dime, but you need to do something. It's balancing. It's a terrible balancing. It really is. And I mean, I've got 22 years of experience in doing it, and it wasn't always easy, and it definitely wasn't always good.
Well, I'm sure you had conversations like that with the antivirus. Like, why do I need antivirus? No one's ever gonna, you undoubtedly have those types, although maybe on a less severity level 20 years ago than today. But
yeah, I mean, I think so. You even think about like the day like when SentinelOne and Silence kind of first hit the market, and this whole idea about this next gen AV EDR thing came about. It's like, well, what is this magic pixie dust, and how is this fairy tale going to work? Like, I need a signature that'll protect me. And so it's just that reality that we all have to change, and understanding that, it is changing. And if you and I, if we tell better stories to people and we relate our everyday life, like I tell people all the time, like, it was good enough when I rolled down my window and I cranked it with my hand. And I know some of you just called me old, and that's okay. But now we all push buttons. There was a point in time, my very first car, there was no air conditioning. Yeah, I did. It was 2x55. I rolled down both windows and went 55 miles. And that was my air conditioning.
there you go.
Those creature comforts of life that has made us more safe. It's made us more efficient. Has helped us to do things in our lives that hopefully give us more time. It's the same thing when it comes to cybersecurity. We have to start adopting some of these technologies, but with the right people and process to sit in front of the technology. That's where it gets really great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, Michael. I think that, certainly SonicWall has a fantastic opportunity given the sheer size of your community. I mean, it was already big, in the early 2000s, but I know that it's grown substantially since then in the last 20 years. But I think that if they follow your recipe of the technologies are here, they're not that difficult to use. They're not that expensive. They're certainly far less expensive than the hassle of dealing with ransomware or other types of security data incidents. And maybe this is just a lesson for the MSP practitioner to have more confidence in the tech. I know it's not a lack of technology confidence. It's, I don't know. What do you think it is? Being told no, the client saying no, I'm going to leave you. Is it a loss of revenue, or is it just something else?
I think there's definitely some of that. I mean, nobody will. I mean, does anybody really want to be told no? Honestly, I mean, but the most powerful thing that you can do sometimes is tell somebody no, because it does force teams, if they're really willing to grow and listen, and it's at all phases of life. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, hey, no, Michael, I know you want to drive 100 miles an hour, but you probably shouldn't do that. Don't do it. So yeah, some of it is telling them no, but some of them is also just be willing and open to learn. And we all kind of get set in our ways sometimes, and we think we've got it, and we stop learning, which is a really dangerous place to be. And when we stop learning in the position that we're in, then what are we doing for everybody behind us that we're supporting? We're not taking care of them in the best way that we can. And we're not being the best leaders that we can, because we're stopping to inspire them to become something better. So there's a lot of that, and the loss of revenue. I mean, look, the economy's not great right now. And so losing money can be really difficult. But the reality is that if you've got the right story and you are truly the trusted advisor, like we've heard that name for 2 decades. But if you are truly committed to your client and they're committed to you, and you've built and established a really strong relationship, more than just taking an order from them, when you come to them and you tell them, this is what we have to do. The threat landscape has changed. The threat actors are using AI and ML, and they've become sophisticated, and they're working in conjunction with one another. And they're coming after you because, like, look, am I going to go hit the bank in town, or am I going to go try to rob 5 houses? I probably get away with robbing 5 houses quicker than hitting. Now, I'm not robbing any houses. I know this is recorded, so I'm not doing it. So nobody's going to blame me for this.
Academic purposes only.
Yeah, academic purposes only. But that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And that's what the SMBs are, that's what they're suffering from right now. They are the local community that is easy to, because we're not.
So I hear you. I think that this is an ongoing thing, and I'm gonna end with this question, which I ask a lot of people when talking about cyber, and that is, as a former military professional, do you think that we are winning the war on cyber, and can it be won?
I do believe that it can be won. If I don't have faith and hope, then I've given up, and I don't know how we actually win the fight. So I do believe, and I don't think it's misplaced belief. Are we winning it today? Some days yes, some days no. Some days I see some of the most amazing things that are taking place, and people are just really working hard to do the right thing. And then you get a couple instances where, like, oh my, really? Could we have just done some of the basic? Like, please stop telling people how amazing and great you are and doing this, showing that. Unfortunately, I think the stats show that we're losing more than we're winning.
Right.
But for me, and I think for you and I get to tell a consistent story. And, for the Matt Lees of the world and all of the other amazing people out there that are trying to be fantastic leadership, the more of us that keep telling this story, the better it is and the faster it gets. So yes, I believe we can. I believe that we will, but it does take the entire community. Like, Michael Jordan didn't win it all by himself. He was pretty darn good. Tom Brady was pretty darn good, but that was a team effort. We have to do a better job of being a team, a whole community team, from the end user to the MSP to the manufacturer, all of us saying we're going to do it together. That's how we win this. It's not going to be technology as much as it's going to be a team effort.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, I think that's a beautiful sentiment. I agree with it. I think it's elegant, but I think it's powerful. And I think it can and it will work. Michael, I appreciate what you and your career in the channel have done. I appreciate what you and the great folks at SonicWall are continuing to do with the creation of these technologies that the SMB market definitely needs. Keep it up, and would love to have you on in the future to talk about this stuff as it evolves, because it undoubtedly will evolve, and there's always going to be stuff to talk about and analyze. So appreciate you dropping in.
No, I appreciate you having me and giving me a little bit of time to give my 2 cents. Hopefully it's worked for our viewers today.
Absolutely.